Hello, everyone, and welcome to the People Strategy Forum. Today's guest is someone who doesn't just design labs, she is the future of innovation. Marilee Lloyd is the Associate Principal of National Laboratory Planning Leader at HED, one of the nation's top architectural and engineering firms. With over 35 years of experience, she's helped some of the world's most respected organizations like Pfizer and Bayer and Industrial Scientific create spaces where science thrives, talent sticks around, and collaboration sparks real breakthroughs. She's not just about building facilities, she's about shaping environments that elevate people, support diversity, and create cultures where curiosity and engagement live side by side. So, if you've ever wondered how your workplace can be even more than just a few four walls and can actually drive performance and innovation, you're about to get a masterclass in one of the best in the business, Marilee Lloyd. So, Marilee, welcome to the People Strategy Forum.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Quite
Yes,
an
and
introduction. I appreciate that. I'll try to live up to it.
of course you do. And so, one thing, Marilee, I would love to uh, kind of dive into and understand your background a little bit more. And so, what got you interested in helping organizations devise these type of workspaces that really engage and bring the best of what people have to offer?
It's been a long road, and when I was deciding what I wanted to be when I grew up, which I'm not quite sure I've gotten that right yet. I was really divided between an interest in architecture and design and an interest in science. I really thought human genetics was absolutely fascinating when I was in high school, and I was all about the science. But I was also interested in architecture and design and how that worked, how community and how buildings worked in communities was super interesting to me. At one point, I really considered a PhD in architectural history and theory because I was really engaged by how buildings worked in their environment and how they work to form a community. So all that said, I had this interest in science and interest in architecture. I said, okay, well, I'll go to architecture school, see what happens. And that went pretty well. 5 years degree, worked for a little while, got my license and practiced for a bit and had the opportunity to do some science facilities, science related laboratories early on in my career. And never really looked back because that melding of those science facilities and the interest in architecture and design really sparked, I don't know, whatever it is that I needed within me, and catapulted me forward. Like this is the thing. And so I consider myself to be super lucky because I'm one of those people that actually gets to do this super cool thing. I get to meet with some of the most interesting, engaging, and intelligent people that I have ever had the opportunity to meet and work with. And I learn stuff every day. Each building is a little different. Each client, their environment, their needs, and how we create that experience for them is very different. And so that's what I get to do. And I love it.
Yeah, so Marilee, you've worked with everyone from global pharmaceutical giants to academic institutions. When you think about how these places have changed over the near history, let's just say over the past 20 years, the workplace has really gone through a big metamorphosis. Can you tell us a little bit about how the workplace once was versus what it is today, and what are the demands?
Sure. From my perspective, um, the science and laboratory environments have gone from being cellular and isolated from where the lab is and where I will sit down and write up my findings and where I will interact with other people in my organization. So those two things were more apart, and they are growing more together over time. I think that, and technology is a big part of that. How we engage with things that are science related is different. What our science looks like is different. Um, you know, what a lab looks like is a little bit, there are some strong commonalities, but how that space looks and functions is different. It is much more adaptable. It is much more flexible. It changes and needs to change with different research directions. So big changes on both sides. How people work, how they engage with each other, um, has changed. And, I think what we're seeing now is um, at one point, people were further apart, and we were all, or actually they were together, and then they got further apart during the pandemic. And there was an important step we had to do in how and understand how we work together remotely. Now I think there's a coming back together and an understanding that there might should be some level of collaboration, and sometimes that engagement is online, it is remote. Sometimes that engagement is deeply personal and in person. So how do we do that in a lab environment for science, and how do we do it in a more conventional work environment, is and how we make that seamless, and how we show the culture of a place is
Right.
different.
And yeah, and the one thing that, I mean, just kind of the back this up to the basic building blocks. I mean, you mentioned creating a community at work. Now, 50 years ago, I mean, work was a place where it was separate from our life.
Yes.
That and it was we did a very defined set of duties. A lot of times we're working in silos and so forth. And but now the modern workplace demands more. It demands a broader level of collaboration, greater communication, and flexibility with different types of people, different languages, different generations. And so, what are the common themes that you see in an organization when you first step in? What are the common problems that organizations face when before you do your magic?
Well, I think that part of this is understanding um, what they want to bring together, and what culture or community they want to produce, establish, grow, um, and how they want to do that. So talking with them about their strategic goals, and how we move them toward that is part of that engagement. Understanding what their values are as an organization, so we can help support that, sort of structurally through the facility. And that means providing spaces for those collaboration things to happen, whether that thing is a chance meeting, a serendipitous meeting, we often say. We talk about the irresistible stare, which means a stair that you want to walk up because it's so fun and engaging, rather than take an elevator. Because, and how you might interact with people on those stairs. We have in a recent project for a Wacker Chemical Company in Ann Arbor, Michigan, we made them what we called an irresistible stair that became a collaboration platform. So at different levels up the stair, we had different opportunities to collaborate and engage. And at the top was the cafe. So different people across that building from different communities could come together, whether that's the marketing group who had a space and they could come in there, whether that was some lab techs who also wanted to filter through there. So everybody had an opportunity to come to that space, and that became the hub of the community. So we're looking to find those places and make them, well, supercharge them so that they establish the toeholds for community, to give people a place feels like theirs, that sort of allows them that safe place to be. Now, there are other ways the architecture and the built environment support all sorts of different cultural needs, whether that's providing somebody with a quiet room, because we might need to make a phone call during the day, but not have an assigned office. So you might need a quiet place to make a phone call. Or you might need just 5 minutes to collect yourself. A lactating individual might need to pump. So all of those things might need to happen, and we need to provide places for them. So that's from the micro to a little bit about the macro.
That's fascinating. I mean, thinking about all these different needs of a community and an organization, and I mean, in fact, I mean, these needs are different by client. Is that right? And so,
Yep.
how do you go to understand that all the different needs? I mean, what is the first step that you do to really understand the organization and how it can best serve its people?
Well, we ask a lot of questions. There are a lot of interviews with. We take some time. First, there's a visioning session where we talk about what the strategic goals are, and we talk to different groups and understand both the demographics. And so we know which different generations are present and how they might interact or need to interact. And so, along with that, we'll look at generationally their involvement with technology. Whether they are someone who grew up with their iPhone, Google phone, and their tablet, or whether they're someone who does not did not grow up with it, but still engages with it on a day-to-day basis. So there's that technology native thing that we talk about and discuss, and how providing the platform rather than separating those individuals and making that relationship adversarial, how we can make that relationship supportive, and how we can allow for them to come together in good places to learn from each other. We also want to provide places, for example, in a science environment. Oftentimes, the lab techs can learn from each other, whether that is in a higher education environment or in just a corporate environment. Those technicians working in a lab can share information and data across investigation groups. So having that opportunity for them to do, and also the PIs, the principal investigators, who lead research teams, they might interact with each other and learn and grow from each other. So those are two groups that need to have some collaboration spaces. Now, those techs back there may need to interface with people and share data from relevant instruments to the research team that may or may not be located in their same physical location. So that has both a narrow and a broad context, and how we set that up for success is one set of requirements, and how we get the PIs, who again may have colleagues internal and external to the organization globally, how we make sure all that happens, and then also allow the PI and the tech staff to interface. So getting everyone to grow and maintain their best selves is important. Now, in different environments, the cultural needs are different. In some communities, there is a need for a reflection room. Some people may require a room at various times of the day to sit in meditation, and that room may require different sorts of support, water, whatever. A person may need to, as I mentioned, there may be the need for a lactation room. So very different requirements, but both important needs that may happen throughout the day and culturally different.
And one of the things that I find in a lot of workplaces right now is just the amount of diversity, and we're talking about diversity in a variety of different levels, from the way people work, the with some people they need that quiet environment, some people need that interaction, some need both at different times, and then there's just generational type of different styles of working, and with the different devices, as you mentioned, and doing their best work. There's different religions and things like this that you bring together, and cognitive abilities of different cognitive styles. And so and then all this is very, it changes, it malleable. It's like it may work this year, but then another 2 years it may be a different demand, or as this group retires and so forth. And so how do you help organizations stay fluid enough with their environment so they can adapt to those new needs? And is that something that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think about and talk about this just in terms of, excuse me, what I call, excuse me, the divergent lab. And so that is sort of my construct for a platform for science. It is how we make the laboratory and the entire building flexible and adaptable, and how we modularize certain components without sanitizing. Don't confuse those two. Um, Modularize it so we can plan for change and support it, whether that be by flexible systems that can move, adapt, and grow. The HVAC environment that is needed to support a laboratory space is different and more demanding than that needed to support an office space. But we look to create some space in between that can be a little fungible, so that there is that opportunity for things to flex and grow, so that how we design for today allows them space to grow. So we spend a lot of time talking with them, to our clients, about what is your plan. That's why those visioning and strategic goal setting initial meetings are so important, because we're looking to understand how much flexibility, how much flex and need to grow we may want to encounter, and how much unforeseen circumstances we need to think about, and what do we need to bring to the table to help them achieve their goals. Understanding that these lab environments may need to be reconfigurable, that there is more and more demand for what I'll call computational space, which is more dry, but certainly service driven still. By dry, I mean it has less water in it. But those spaces still have enormous service demands, both in terms of data. It goes back to that AI or computational driven systems. So we're seeing them need more data. So how do we use that to our advantage to make the space adaptable? So it's about understanding their needs and using that to sort of strategically guide them.
Very, interesting. And so I know that you were talking about dry as being a place with no water. And I was like, and when you said dry, I was thinking about a place that is like, for I deal with a lot of technology companies at times, and so they're thinking about a place where they can quiet and focus and be not disturbed, and then other times where they need to be in a room and buzzing and brainstorming, and then other times where they need to find ways to decompress and so forth. So there's these different phases that they go through during a day. But one of the common challenges I see a lot of organizations have, especially even in the new work environment, as you've been speaking about, is the more of the remote work or different locations, and and then the hybrid work. Some people are in the office and are not in the office at times, and so. And so one story, just real quick, I went into a place a couple of years ago. It was a technology company, and they were having a hard time with cultures in two different locations. In their headquarters, they had this very vibrant culture. It was nature. They're surrounded with nature and so forth. And then they had another location and a couple states away which was more that dry environment, as you're talking. That was kind of sterile, not as surrounded with nature, and had a different culture. And so they tried a variety of things to bring these locations together. And one of the things that they did was um, find ways for them to interact more seamlessly, and that was helpful. But they had some the basic problems. And so, what are your thoughts on organizations that experience this siloed type of a behavior in where the cultures are significantly different? Is there an easy fix?
It provides a great challenge because in even just in different parts of the United States, there are um, different cultural norms, for lack of a better word. So you're going to find things that are different, and the way people approach things a little different. And I think that organizations need to find their balance point, find what's okay, and have the tools. One thing that I've seen is an open collaboration wall that is an open, uh, I don't know if you want to call it a window, a screen between two places that is always open. And you can walk up there and see into somebody else's, I don't know, their hub space, their cafe. So it's cafe to cafe. So there is that constant exchange, and you can see what the environment is like through the windows to that other place. So you have that connection. So those sorts of connecting devices, that's one of those uses of technology that can help ground and embed two places. It gets a little bit more confusing when it's multiple time zones and multiple locations. For instance, here at HED, we've got multiple locations, so it could be anytime, anywhere. So you don't know if everybody's going to be in the office, but having that particular engagement tool in the toolbox is one thing to investigate. Setting up, standing ways of interacting, times for interaction are also ways to do that. Use the technology to share information. Those are all points of engagement. We do a lot of our design meetings will be in person and virtual so that we can get everybody on board. And the value in that virtual connection sometimes is multifolded. One is that sometimes it is hard for people to read drawings. Not everyone is used to thinking and seeing in 3 dimensions, as many design professionals are. So we can use tools better virtually to walk people through that environment and to bring everybody together and let them see it. So that's another one of those things that helps us get engagement, is to be able to walk them through an environment or another environment that's similar. This is what we did for a previous client. Here's what this looks like, and allow them to walk through that and experience it. And to be able to see the model that we're developing, because we do work in a 3-dimensional model now, to share that with them and to be able to print out an axonometric if they want to see it, a perspective if they want to see it, and to be able to show that to them live as the design develops.
So is that like a virtual reality type of experience you're creating?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, very
Absolutely. Most AE firms anymore have the ability through most firms use Revit or a similar kind of program that allows us to work 3-dimensionally. And you can put on, Google goggles, for the lack of a better word, and walk through that very much like you would in a game situation. So younger staff are totally into it, and young folks they zoom through the model. I find that some people who are less used to it can get a little seasick at first because you're kind of zooming through, and You just got to get used to that whole thing. But yeah, that's one way we take clients through their building. Put
So
them.
it seems like that would be an exceptional uh, ex- experience would be to show a leader what it's like to go through their building in a wheelchair or something like that.
Yes, yeah,
What are those those employees experience? And what's the
that's a very good point. And we do um, talk about those sorts of issues with respect to needing to deal with individuals that have a different perspective, be that in a wheelchair, or need some other device that helps them, um, and how that works within a laboratory setting or within the rest of the workplace, and how we make those accommodations, and how that ultimately makes things better and stronger for everyone. For example, in most laboratory environments now, most counters on adaptable systems furnishings in a lab, that those can be set at a variety of heights. So whether you're seated or standing or in a wheelchair, that can be set to accommodate you, either an electronic or a crank or a just a set peg. So those accommodations are pretty standard. So, and in academic situations, we almost always go to a concept called universal design, where everything is at an accommodated height. So everything is the same. So when you walk into, for instance, a class laboratory, you do not see one desk at a lower height. They're all at the same. So no one is called out.
I see. Yeah. So let's change the discussion a little bit and talk about teams. So, what are the invisible elements of design to help people do their best work in teams day in and day out?
Invisible elements. I think that maybe they are slightly visible, but it can be very subtle clues. Um, Access to daylight in most of our laboratories, just allowing someone to be able to look up and see daylight. Now, there are some lab settings where daylight is not a good idea, and so we don't do it. But where we can, absolutely having access to daylight, a view, so you can get up, you can look and see what time of day it is, see what the weather is like, and see, hopefully, depending on the time of year, see some green. Um, so that's critically important, and how we can bring that into the lab. And that biophilic element can be expressed both by the view and just by simple colors and shapes and forms in the science environment and in the facility as a whole. So bringing that engagement through the building is important. Um, LED lighting can be tuned to the time of day so that the light you get reflects the time of day, or reflects the color that is best for the kind of work that you're doing. So that allows us also to provide a certain amount of dimmability and occupancy sensors, that with the occupancy sensors, we kind of can control better the energy use, which is also a critical element. Laboratories can be energy hogs, and we try to do our best to be good stewards and reduce every bit we can to give our clients something that is energy efficient and well designed, and as forward thinking as we can. And there are devices that we use both on fume hoods and other things that help reduce energy costs, and other strategies for the way the HVAC system can help that too. And that helps everyone.
So I just want to dig into this a little bit more because we all hear. I'm not sure if this is true or not, but like when you think about Las Vegas hotels and you hear that they pump in oxygen and and stuff like this to keep people spending money or excited and so forth. But when we think about teamwork, engagement, performance, happiness of people, is there a formula of an environment that workplaces should be considering at a basic level?
Well, I think I don't know that there's any strict formula because I think it is about the experience and the experience of the facility as a whole. But there is the need for human centered design. So keeping, we have all this technology that supports us, helps us design, helps us live in these buildings, but they have to be human centered. They have to be focused on ourselves as people and how we engage with other people. That's what makes us better. So um, our focus needs to be on what engages people better. So having that diversity of choice in the kind of work environment I need. Do I need to be in the lab? What part of the lab do I need to be? Do I need to be in the clean space? Do I need to be in the darkened space? Do I need to be in the wet lab? So there's that. Do I need to be in a collaborative environment where I can meet with others? Do I need to be doing heads down work today? So I need a quiet place. So all of those things. Do I need a cup of coffee, for goodness sake? So all of those things, meeting those needs and having that diversity of choice. And then, when something happens and someone says, I need to take this call or I need to do this thing, there is also that quiet room that can support them for those personal moments. So that level of diversity in environment with in combination with the biophilic support, um, the technological support for being able to see others, interact with others, communicate with others, or do whatever work you need to on your instrument in your lab. All that technology. So it is creating a whole integrated environment. So it's not one thing; it's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's too bad there's not a magic bullet. That that's good in every situation, but I guess it keeps your expertise quite valuable for
Yeah, I
sure.
guess, yeah, that's well, I refer to it when I talk about it. My final element is sprezzatura, which is an Italian word, and as first conceived by the 14th century Italians, it's the air of perfect naturalness, as my old history professor would tell me. And to me, that building has to have that energy. It has to be seated in itself, and it has to be a whole representing the culture of that organization and those people. So that's the magic.
Yes. The other thing I would like to talk about now is that we there's a growing need of organizations to protect their intellectual property, and that causes some natural barriers. So for instance, you have to only certain people are allowed in the laboratory. Only certain people can have are in HR during those times where people are having private discussions about other people. So is there a way to kind of maintain these areas of need to be protected, but also give a feeling of openness? Is there anything that companies can do there?
Absolutely. We take a good bit of time to talk about, for example, for our corporate clients, what a tour through the building might look like and allow them to enclose views and open views so that they know where they can place things to allow for a certain amount of view in so that it appears open. Excuse me. Um, then closes down, it throws itself down at certain points so that they can have those private spaces. Because you're right, absolutely intellectual property is critically important. And so being able to provide space that is private and still has, for instance, a view to outside, but that view is controlled so that someone can't film in, for example, and how we shield that. Or for a tour, how we show them certain things and keep things, maybe there's a turn provided in the bill, through the tour route that allows something to still have a good bit of openness and connection, but isn't viewable by the public as they take a tour through. So it is just about controlling those views as someone comes through the building. There are also a lot of access control strategies that we use to allow someone to badge in or not badge into a certain place. Because not only do we want to protect intellectual property, we want to keep people safe. And if they're not trained how to use a certain portion of a laboratory, they probably ought not to be in there because the tools in there might hurt them. So understanding that the badging is not just for intellectual control, it is about safety too.
Makes sense. Yes, for sure. Now, the other thing you kind of mentioned as far as visitors coming in. So I always, when I talk about this concept, is I often think of Disney. When people work at Disneyland or work at Disney World, because I just went to Disney like two weeks ago with my daughter, it comes to mind. But when people that are working there and then people that are visiting have this sense of magic, there's like this experience. And then people that are working there, they also want that magic as well, or a similar type of experience. But in some organizations that I visit, there's a significant difference between the customer and the employee experience. Should that be somewhat intertwined? What are your thoughts there?
Well, that's an interesting idea. I recall having spent some years growing up in St. Petersburg, Florida. Going to Disney World was totally a part of my growth as a kid. So I remember knowing that about all the tunnels underneath Disney World that allowed the princesses to get to where they needed to be. So there is that level of magic. And in most laboratories, we have sort of we map materials and service flows so that, any materials that hazardous materials or new equipment. So there are established pathways for those things so that it's safe. And to people who should not we might not want them to see those things, so they don't see that behind the scenes stuff. So in that way, we're kind of shielding a tour group from that. We're also making it easier to use the lab, quite frankly, by facilitating that movement and making it safer and making it easier, because people know, okay, I'm going to be bringing this piece of equipment in, and if I'm going to do that, I need to use these specific corridors because they're better and built for that purpose. So those sorts of ways we both control the environment for the lab users and for everyone else. But they should both have an engaged experience. So I don't think one should be less valuable or less magic. I think they should both have their levels of engagement, but the level and experience is different. It is different, not better or worse.
I see. Yeah, I agree. Now, as we're kind of coming to the conclusion of our discussion today, I would love to just get your thoughts on what the future of the space looks like. I mean, because when we're thinking about the design of our workplace is not only changing, but there's also new elements that are being added to it. such as we know that right now there's the onset of artificial intelligence. And not too much in the future here, there's expected to be another boom of robotics in the combination of those two. What are your thoughts of how the future workplace might look with both artificial intelligence and more robotics being involved?
I think that there is a great opportunity bridging those two for a certain amount of automation within the laboratory environment. So some repeatable experiments could be done or hazardous experiments could be done wholly with a robotic um, AI driven element where humans don't have to on a daily basis interact. So those facilities could be quite separate and maybe even in a dark zone so that those only need to be monitored to make sure everything's actively performing accurately. So having that sort of robotic function to do those things, we often hear about the need for reproducible results in science. So that level of AI and robotic logic string driven, very scientific controlled, that will hopefully drive better reproducible results to drive innovation further in science. It also because of the innovations in AI allows us to analyze data more completely, more and work through results more quickly. Um, so analyze different options. I'm thinking of X-rays, for example. AI has proven to do an excellent job of analyzing X-rays or other results quickly for people. So using it in that sort of way, I think, can catapult research, but and understanding where we use the robotics to do that, delivering results from one place to another. Hospitals are using robots for that currently. There's no reason that won't go further and be even more robust in the future. So having certain parts of the lab that are really run by robots and not humans, I think is one of those future scenarios.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Marilee. So, as we kind of conclude here today, what are the top things that you want our leaders out there to keep in mind as we close this discussion?
Gosh, I think that understanding that the built environment is a reflection of their culture and the strategic goals of the company, that whether that is a university or a corporate client, that um, the science and laboratory environments are um, part of the overall experience and they're not separate, that things are stronger when they're interwoven, that idea of sprezzatura is truly a thing and makes for a better building. Um, that the hope for the future is an environment that makes people stronger, and so the focus on people and their space and their needs, including diverse voices, helps science get better, because different voices help raise science. We all know that for the longest time, a lot of women's products were designed without women. So they'll be better if we include everybody. And by that I do mean everybody.
Right. No, understood. Yes, and we just had a podcast on that very topic not too long ago. Is with keeping the end user in mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating how many leaders start a process with their laden with their own bias, and they're not thinking about, well, maybe we should ask some questions.
Yeah. Getting your users involved makes the process better. Yeah, it's a little gooey, and yes, there are a lot of voices, but that will make things better and stronger.
Right. Well, a lot of our leaders may be thinking, I'd like to learn more from Marilee and so forth. I mean, what do you recommend? How should they contact you or your organization?
You can contact me directly at mlloyd@hed.co, or mlloyd@hed.design. Both of those will work. There is a HED website, so check it out. You can find me on LinkedIn. Ask questions. I am always happy to chat, to talk through things, to work through problems and issues. That it's what we do as architects. I think uh, we're problem solvers. That's really what we're trained to do, and to look. We kind of live outside the box, and look back through it. So give us a call, check us out.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Marilee, for joining us today on the People Strategy Forum. It was a great conversation. Thank you for your time and sharing your wisdom.
I absolutely enjoyed it. It was a pleasure.
Great. Well, for all of you tuning in, we'll see you next week on the People Strategy Forum. Take care, everyone.